Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host Raghunath and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York City, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the Srimad Bhagavatam, because we could all use some positive direction in confusing times. How do you like that for a tagline for our Srimad Bhagavatam campaign?
Can you say
we
it
can
again?
all use some positive direction in confusing times.
Okay.
Something?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
It's good. It's true, though. It's confusing times. We need some positive direction. How are you? That was a great interview with Radha Swami yesterday, wasn't it?
It really was. You know, it's like we never know where it's like when we interviewed him for Janmashtami, for Krishna's birthday. He was just like, yeah, wherever it goes, spontaneous, whatever. Let's not have it, you know.
Right.
And he was like really talkative about his past, about, you know, wandering around Vrindavan. And then it was just, I don't know, it was somehow different yesterday, but it was, to me, it was really substantial. Like he was giving really good answers to these subtle topics, you know, sensitive topics. I thought it was really good.
I got a lot of positive feedback from people who were writing me during the course of the day.
Yeah, I did as well. Did you have any other celebratory activities there yesterday? A little special puja or something?
We had a big puja
For Radha?
for our deities on our altar, and my son baked cookies. It happened to be my wife's birthday, so sort of like merged them both. Like Mara baked a cake. We sort of offered it. We sort of like
sort of offered it.
we sort of like offered the cake to the deities and then to my wife, and then just we sort of like merged the birthdays of both of them.
Okay.
Yeah, but it was good. And just went for walks and chanted. I talked to Radha Swami for like an hour, which was very nice.
My wife and I spoke with him also. It was wonderful.
I spoke with him too.
I spoke with him longer than you did.
I think maybe not. I'm going to check the time on my phone. I think it was much longer than yours, probably. I talked to Mara. I hung out
I did.
in the kitchen.
Okay.
Just wandering around that kitchen with the chef hat on. Chefs love wearing that hat. Ever notice that? Ever see chefs? They always love wearing that hat. She's like, I've earned that hat. Okay, let's go to the Bhagavatam, because I'm sort of in a silly, playful mood, and people are serious here. Well, we start with these. If you're new to the show, welcome. We start with these mantras. This sort of introduce the Srimad Bhagavatam. They're in the Bhagavatam itself. There's many invocations to glorify the Bhagavatam, but we choose these two. And here they are. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narotamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudiraye udirayet. Sorry. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances to the personality of Godhead Narayan. Unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta Priyeshvabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavat Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. And loving service to the personality of Godhead, whose praise with transcendental songs is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnana-tamarandasya Jnana-shalakaya Chakshurunmadatam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Kaustubha, we are in a new chapter.
New chapter.
An exciting chapter 2, Canto 2, text 1. And the name of the chapter is, I love the names of the chapter. They're always so like monumental. The Lord in the heart.
The Lord in the heart. So previous chapter, we heard about how the Lord can be seen in the universe, in the mountains, in the oceans, in the rivers, in the this and that, even in the whole planetary systems, how one can think of God when they see nature. This chapter is talking about the Lord in the heart.
Yeah. And it's one of those things people always say, God is in my heart, God is inside. Bhagavatam agrees. Right here, the Lord is in the heart. Text 1. Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, formerly, prior to the manifestation of the cosmos. It's pretty interesting right there. Before the cosmos, there was other stuff going on. Before, right, prior to the manifestation of the cosmos, Lord Brahma, by meditating on the Virat Rupa, that means the whole universal, the form of the universe, regained his lost consciousness by appeasing the Lord. Thus, he was able to rebuild the creation as it was before.
And so, yeah, everything's happening in cycles. Brahma gets born into an empty universe. Yes, and we're going to actually hear his prayers for creative energy. I think that might even be the next chapter. There's some great stuff coming up in the second.
There's a difference also between other spiritual traditions, at least the major spiritual traditions. We don't talk about a beginning of time in the Vedic paradigm. We talk about a cyclical time. Things happen in cycles, like the changing of seasons.
And so
no beginning, actually. It's an eternal. Yoga is an eternal practice. It's an amazing concept, because what yoga really means is it's the chance for the soul to reconnect with God. So as long as there's been God, there's always been a certain demographic of spirit souls who are not satisfied with the material world, that thinks there should be more than what is going on in the material world, and they choose to reconnect. And therefore, yoga is ageless.
That's right.
And it's cyclical.
And so what's with this verse right here, it's referring back to the chapter that we just read. Seems like it was a long time ago, right? We had a question and answer day.
Yeah. It was
we had an interview with Shyam Sundar. Then we had a day off. Then we had an interview with Radha Swami. It seems like it was a long time ago that we were on the previous chapter. But that chapter was about the Virat Rupa, or seeing God in everything. And so Marsh Prickett might have asked, well, has anyone ever succeeded at that type of meditation and achieved the goal of it? So here's Sukadeva Goswami saying, yes, as a matter of fact, Lord Brahma, he was able to meditate on the Virat Rupa, and he regained his lost consciousness in this way. And he connected with God and received the order and the inspiration and the ability to recreate the universe. So that's a big example.
The inspiration. Yeah. So here's the first example. Brahma did it.
Okay.
Text 2. The way of presentation of the Vedic sounds is so bewildering that it directs the intelligence of the people to meaningless things like heavenly kingdoms. The conditioned souls hover in dreams of such heavenly, illusory pleasures, but actually they do not relish any tangible happiness in such places. This is beautiful, huh?
Yeah, and of course, this is what Bhagavatam is doing again and again throughout, from the very beginning to the end. It's going to do this. It's going to say there are 3 different ways to see the world. One is the karmic way, one is the jnanic way, and one is the way of bhakti. And the karmic way is like, let me do the things in this world so I will get good things in this world. Let me do good, let me be pious, let me do the right ritual, and I want to receive the things of this world. And the Vedas, the 4 Vedas teach that. So it says the the way of presentation of the Vedic sounds, the mantras and all of that is so bewildering. It actually can be it can be a step forward, but also but you need to progress beyond it. But it makes one think, oh, there are higher planets with higher levels of enjoyment. Let me live a good, pious life so I can enjoy that. And he's saying that actually, even there is no real tangible happiness. And, today on Patreon, I'll post a talk I gave on Sunday for the Bhakti Center's Bhagavad Shravana series.
Yeah.
And it's about Krishna lifting Govardhan Hill. But it's 24 verses, and it's really amazing how Indra is like the king of the heavens, right? He's
got it all. He's the 1%. He's the 1%.
He's the 0.0000001%. Yeah, he's like the ultimate enjoy. If we all try to create a circumstance where we can be like an Indra, we can have our realm of enjoyment, and the material energy is moving in different ways, and we're trying to shift it so that we can get it set for our enjoyment. He's got better facility than anyone, right? In this universe, he's the topmost, but still we see throughout Bhagavatam, and Indra falls into states of deep anxiety, right? He becomes bewildered, he becomes fearful.
Sure.
And so that's one of those, I'll post it, but it's really some fantastic 24 verses about the difference between the mentality of Indra, who's got this karmic viewpoint that's being discussed here, that even you go to the heavenly kingdoms, you don't really have happiness. The difference between him and his consciousness and that of the simple cowherd people of Vrindavan, right? Who, even though their whole village is being bombarded, they're actually just enjoying, and they're happy. They have no fear. They have complete shelter.
There's a tendency to think that if I have so much, then I'll finally relieve my anxiety. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like if I get more, my anxiety will go down. And I'm sure you've seen it as well too. But I think in America we have a lot than a lot of the people in the world. We have a lot. Even if you don't have a lot, we have a lot relatively. But then there's people you have or that just have more and more and more. And sometimes I have these clients that have so much, it's almost unbelievable. But it's not the moreness that alleviates anxiety. It's sort of the state of consciousness. Matter of fact, sometimes having more causes greater anxiety. Sometimes be that New Yorker that has an upstate home, you're just like, your brain is split in two different places. How can the material world has a limit to how much you can actually enjoy in it. And that's the problem with uncontrolled sense gratification. It's just like, I want more and more and more. There's no end to it. And finally you get to this place where we turn to the Bhagavatam. Maybe not everybody turns to the Bhagavatam for this, but you get to this point of sort of like, I hate to do this again, but it's really back to big deal. It's the old hashtag big deal. Big deal, material world. What else can I do here? What else can I collect here? What else can I purchase here? There's a gaping hole in my heart that none of this stuff can fulfill. And a matter of fact, in the name of fulfilling it, it just gives me more anxiety. And so I'm thinking about, like, we're blessed that in America or in the Western culture that we can sort of indulge only to get like repulsed by the indulgence, and we start going inside. And that's why, like you and me, we have this great opportunity, which not that many people get, just to give up all this stuff and to live like a monk and to live like a cowherd boy, maybe. But to not just it's not just giving up stuff that makes you happy, although it does probably relieve some anxiety, but creates another anxiety. But it is to dive deep in those meditational practices of the tradition and live simply.
That becomes the theme right here, is living simply. Now, for these next verses, it's just that, why are we wasting our time trying to accumulate more and more as if that's going to bring us happiness? And so now we're going to hear some really great verses about simple living.
Are we going to touch on the tiny home movement? Is that where they're going with this? The tiny home. Build your home on wheels, park it anywhere, live in a 200-foot square. 200.
I see those things sometimes. They pop up.
Oh, they're everywhere upstate.
Well, I don't mean, I haven't seen them. I mean, like they pop up on my Facebook feed or something like that. Like
Tiny
someone's got
home.
one.
It's the thing, Kaustubha.
Well, you know, people see it, right? And you think, oh, that must be such a nice way to live, right? There's like something inside that, you know, now for, of course, if your mind's not simple enough, it's not going to be enough for you. Right?
Well, the problem is
But the idea is attractive.
the problem is we're pendulums. So
Yeah.
we want a pendulum through indulgence. Oh, I want everything. And they want a pendulum. No, I'm sick of everything. I want to give it all up. This idea of bhoga to try to enjoy and tyaga to try to renounce. And the pendulum swings back. I want to live it very simple. The problem with simple living is the problem. Here, I'm going to criticize simple living now. The problem with simple living is unless there's spirit behind it, you're
Won't be
just like
sustained. Yeah.
you're just like a hillbilly type. You know what I mean? And yeah, it's really where the consciousness goes. Simple living's great if the consciousness is high.
Okay. And if not, then just go ahead and indulge.
Yeah. No, not indulge, but indulgence just has pain in itself.
Simplicity is something that has to be cultivated, right? Anyway, let's read on. We're going to
Okay,
hear about
here's what
this.
the Bhagavatam says. For this reason, the enlightened person, this is text 3, should endeavor only for the minimum necessities of life, while in the world, this is a good one, while living in the world of names.
World of names.
We live in a world of names. I'll finish this and then we'll. He should be intelligently fixed and never endeavor for unwanted things, being competent to perceive practically that all such endeavors are merely hard labor for nothing. All endeavors are hard labor for nothing.
It's another perspective. You know, there's this phrase is being used, the world of names. Now, you know, I was trying to research this. I didn't have enough time this morning. It's actually something I tried to, I can't find it. If anybody out there can help me find this, there was a video once by, you know, that person that you and I admired so much, Sariputta Das, right? Who was
Dr. Richard L. Thompson.
Dr. Richard L., who happens to be the author of
Alien Identities.
There you go.
Vedic texts.
That's right.
Let's just have a study group and read that book.
It's a good idea. So, yeah, that would be fun, actually.
It would be great.
So, I saw him, you know, a lot of times on the show, we speak about how this world is something like a virtual reality. And there's a video where he speaks about how this world is like a virtual reality, comparing it to, you know, drawing from the teachings of the Bhagavatam. And he came to this verse, you know, about the world of names. And he showed how like computer language is it's just labels or names. He had a very brilliant way of tying these two together. I wish I could find that, and especially for a day like today. But at least let's say this about the world of names. That in this world, it's the material realm, you know, again, now Bhagavatam philosophy, yoga philosophy is going to say beyond this realm, there is a realm wherein time doesn't exist. And what that means is that things don't grow old and deteriorate. We think that that's just nature and that's the way everything must be because we're living in this realm. But Bhagavatam is saying there's a realm where that principle is not in effect. It is in effect in this world. So in this world, the form, you take a form and you give it a name, right? Every form has a name. Right now,
the Kaustubha form.
There's this form and there's a name to it. Right now, I'm looking at you and I see behind you. There's like, what is that? Some kind of stove there? What do you call that?
Stove.
Cast iron stove. What do you call
it? A cast iron wood stove.
Okay, so there's the form, and then you call it cast iron stove. That's the name. But at a certain point, the form and the name will be separated, because the form is subject to the law of time. And
you know,
so
I never thought of this whole thing like that. I like how you're saying this. When you said the world of names, I never thought it in terms of stuff. But so continue.
Yeah. So the form and the name are going to become separated because this is a relative world that we live in. Everything is relative toward, you know, especially according to time. What's true one moment is not true the next moment. There is a form and a name joined together right now called your cast iron stove. And at a certain point, the stove will cease to exist. and all that will be left is the name. Right now, in the absolute realm, that's not the case. You're looking over it. I think that's a pretty solid form. Actually,
I'm not looking at the stove. There's a cat, I think, trying to get in the window.
I see. And so, similarly, the cat. What's the name of the cat? Is that Apollo?
That's Apollo, yeah.
And so you were worried a couple of weeks ago that Apollo. You thought Apollo that the name and the form might have separated, right?
Yeah, I'm scared. We all thought Apollo was dying that day. What a day that was.
Right.
What a tough day karmically. Sometimes when it rains, it just pours. It's like a astrological, celestial thing going on.
Well, but you see, that's and there you go. It's like, because we live in a realm wherein it's a world of names, because the name continues after the form is. We feel anxiety because those forms are constantly shifting. We develop attachment to the form, and then the form changes and ultimately is destroyed. And then there's a feeling of anxiety, when that happens, a feeling of fear that may happen. Even if it didn't happen, you were feeling some suffering because of that. True?
For sure.
And so, when I hear this term, the world of names, it reminds me of this incredible poem, that Srila Prabhupada wrote, that was called Vrindavan Bhajan. You're familiar with this, Raghunath?
Yeah. He wrote it.
He wrote it
in Vrindavan
as a sannyasi in Vrindavan in 1958. So Srila Prabhupada, he was at a point in life where he was coming towards the end of his life. He was living separately from his family now. He was living alone as a sadhu in a holy place in Vrindavan. And he was thinking about life. And I'll just read it. It's actually a long poem. Let me see. It's 27 verses. But this is part of it. He says, he's sitting there like in Vrindavan, now alone as a person with no money, right? Just meditating on Krishna.
Walked away from his business.
All
of his material relationships are over. Basically, he's preparing to die.
In a sense, yeah.
Yeah.
He says, in this Maya samsara, in this world of illusion that is constantly going through cycles, right? In this Maya samsara, whom do I really love? Where have all my loving father and mother gone now? And where are all my elders who were my own folk? Who will give me news of them? Tell me who. All that is left of this family is a list of names.
I tell you, when I read that, it's so it's so sobering.
Yeah.
And see, when I read that verse or hear that poem, I go right to like high school, junior high school, elementary school, and all these people that you were like intimately woven. Like, you think that those best friends you had like in childhood, they're so intimately woven with you. I know none of them anymore. I'm so like separate, and it's over. And now it's a long list of names. And then we have other phases of life. I mean, I'm in 54 this year, so I have other phases in life. People that I did jujitsu with, people that I lived in an ashram with, or people that I was in the band with and stuff like that. People I traveled to other countries and hung out with people. It's all gone. They're just long lists of names, and that's sort of like when Prabhupada's facing off with like eternal time. That's all we're left with: God, us, and God. And that long list of names, like, where are they now? It's like, where are they now?
And so this kind of thought, although it sounds a little stark, a little cold, right? This is part of what Jnana means. Separating what's real from what's illusion, what's temporary from what's eternal. Looking at it, in a sense, without any sentimentality, right? Seeing the truth. And that may sound cold and so, but the idea in Bhakti-yoga is that opens you up to truth. And truth is like a very beautiful thing, and it's full of beautiful sentiment, Yeah. So Prabhupada, he goes on in that. He says, all that is left of this family is a list of names. Then listen to this. He says, like the froth on the sea water mixes again into the sea, Maya's samsara, the illusory cycles, they play just like that. No one is mother or father or personal relative. just like the sea foam. They remain for a short time, just as the froth on the sea water mixes again into the sea. The body made of 5 elements meets with destruction. How many bodies does this embodied soul take in this way? His relatives are all simply related to this temporal body. But now this is where it opens up. It says, but everyone is your relative, brother. On the spiritual platform, this relationship is not tinged.
I love how these old Bengalis say brother.
Bye.
It's like a very kind of brother. Hey, brother.
Yeah, that's bye, right? In Bengali,
Yeah.
bye. Yeah. But everyone is your relative, brother, on the spiritual platform. This relationship is not tinged with the smell of Maya. The Supreme Lord is the soul of everyone. Now, this is important. We're going to read now in this chapter about how God is within the heart. The Supreme Lord is the soul of everyone. Every living being is connected to that same God in the heart. The Supreme Lord is the soul of everyone. In relation to him, everyone in the universe is the same. All your relatives, brother. They're all your relatives, brother. Brother, listen,
Yeah,
they're all your relatives. All the billions of jivas, when seen in relation to Krishna, they're all in harmony. Forgetting Krishna, the jiva desires sense gratification. And as a result, he is firmly grasped by Maya. Now he's going to go back, and the poem goes into a lot more of that cold, stark stuff. But this is the idea that if we can see this world for what it is, beyond it, there's like, when we go into that deeper level of consciousness, I connect with God in my own heart. I recognize God in the heart of every living being. Suddenly, everyone becomes very dear, not just this very small selected people that I become very attached to, and then I become separated, and all that's left is the list of names.
Kaustubha, I'm going to ask you to read the next verse while this cat, let this cat in.
Well, I think maybe I'll read a little from the commentary.
Okay.
While you take care of Apollo. By the way, Apollo's not bothering us. I don't know if Apollo's bothering you. We wouldn't even know that Apollo's there.
There he is. It wasn't Apollo, it was Buttercup.
Oh, well, that's another thing. It's
Sister.
Buttercup. Get her out.
All right.
The Bhagavad Dharma, or the cult, Prabhupada again is using that archaic English, right?
I love it. The cult.
Yeah. The Bhagavad Dharma, or the cult of Srimad Bhagavatam, is perfectly distinct from the way of fruitive activities, from the way of trying to get the things of this world, which are considered by the devotees to be merely a waste of time. The whole universe, or for that matter, all material existence, is moving on as jagat, as the universe, simply for planning business to make one's position very comfortable or secure, although everyone sees that this existence is neither comfortable nor secure and can never become comfortable or secure at any stage of development. Right? It's just this is just what happens in our lives. We build them secure, and then something starts to crumble.
It just can't be secure.
And then we start to feel that anxiety. Right? Those who are captivated by the illusory advancement of material civilization, following the way of phantasmagoria, are certainly madmen. Right? In other words, if we invest in something that's temporary, we're crazy.
Mara, can we pull up a definition of phantasmagoria, please?
Yep.
I want the official Merriam-Webster's phantasmagoria definition.
Will of the wisp.
The will of the wisp. You can pull that one up too. Okay, sorry.
Okay,
go on.
sorry, I have phantasmagoria.
She's
A sequence of real or imaginary images like those seen in a dream.
Dreamlike. It's dreamlike.
Dreamlike.
The whole material creation is a jugglery of names only. In fact, it is nothing but a bewildering creation of matter like earth, water, and fire, right? The elements, they come together in a form, and then they disappear and they're gone forever, right? Like a dream.
Amazing.
Right? The dream is there, it seems so real, and then it's gone. The buildings, furniture, cars, bungalows, mills, factories, industries, peace, war, or even the highest perfection of material science, namely atomic energy and electronics, are all simply bewildering names of material elements with their concomitant reactions of the 3 modes. Since the devotee of the Lord knows them perfectly well, he is not interested in creating unwanted things for a situation which is not at all reality. but simply names of no more significance than the babble of sea waves.
And they're significant when they're here. Like if you look at, you just mentioned electronics. I was thinking, what was electronics like in 1975? Completely different,
Yeah.
you know? Like I went to college for a year and the printer was a printing room. That was the printer. The whole thing, that giant, the earliest printers or the earliest fax machines or the earliest scanners, they're just like laughable right now. Things that are appearing significant are now completely insignificant. And just
Quickly.
time goes on like that.
Yeah. He says, the great leaders, the great kings, leaders, and soldiers fight with one another in order to perpetuate their names in history. They're forgotten in due course of time, and they make place for another era in history. But now this is, we have to kind of have this kind of, to be situated in reality, to practice yoga on a deep level. We have to imbibe this within us. We can operate in this world. We can operate as a source of compassion and love, etc. But at the same time, it'll be real. It'll be powerful. It'll be genuine if it's done from this place of realization where we really recognize what this world is. He says, but the devotee realizes how much history and historical persons are useless products of flickering time. The fruitive worker aspires after a big fortune in the matter of wealth, women, and worldly adoration. But those who are fixed in perfect reality are not at all interested in such false things. For them, it is all a waste of time. Since every second of human life is important, an enlightened person should be very careful to utilize time very cautiously. 1 second of human life wasted in the vain research of planning for happiness in the material world can never be replaced. Even if one's
happiness in the material world is the greatest cause of our distress.
Even if one spends millions of coins of gold. Therefore, the transcendentalist desiring freedom from the clutches of Maya or illusion or the illusory activities of life is warned herewith not to be captivated by the external features of the fruitive actors. Human life is never meant for sense gratification, but for
self-realization.
Self-realization. You used to have a shirt like that for shelter, right?
That was a shelter shirt. I didn't make it up. I stole it from Prabhupada.
Right.
I'm not that bright. We all know that.
You had a long.
I'm good at popularizing things.
Okay. So you had a long sleeve shelter T-shirt with Mahavishnu on it.
That was a great shirt. It's a collector's item now.
And on the sleeves it said like
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya in Sanskrit, I think.
But I thought one of them said self-realization, not sense
gratification.
gratification.
That was the shirt. It said on the back, though. It said
on the back, right? I remember once I was
sense gratification.
I was in Vrindavan, walking towards Lloyd Bazaar, something like that, and I saw an old sadhu, full-on long beard, long dreadlocks, begging bowl, bare feet, and he was wearing that T-shirt. I was like, oh, that's cool.
Oh, that's funny. You know what's interesting? India and then I think Shama Sundar was saying like that before internet and cable and satellite TV. You go to places like India, like they were just so far removed from the rest of the world. So so nowadays it might be even more. You might see somebody in a Western.
Yeah. Then it was even
like bizarre.
And I was wondering, how did he get it?
I don't know.
So
charitable Krishna core kid
probably.
Like Lyra Juno might have donated it.
Probably someone wearing it, because it had this amazing painting of Mahavishnu on it, like the Lord lying in the ocean on the snake, and he probably walked up and was like, wow, that is like, and probably the person just took it off and gave it to them. Gave it to him.
It's especially interesting when you see one of these sadhus who like has nothing. They're dreadlocks, ashes on their face, and they're wearing like a Miami Dolphins or there was one sadhu who used to walk around with a Delight sweatshirt. Do you remember him in Vrindavan?
Well, I remember that the chowkidar where my guru used to stay, the gatekeeper, like the door watchman, he used to have a Miami Dolphins sweatshirt.
Yeah, it was the guy. The Miami Dolphins.
That's who you're thinking of.
Yeah.
And I also have a photograph, if I can dig it up from somewhere, of that person I've spoken about before, Jagat Bandhu.
Yeah.
Who was this, sadhu who lived in this quiet
jungles
little remote
Mayapur
of Navadvip. And he I have a picture of him wearing a New York Giants sweatshirt.
And they have no idea what they're even
No.
in.
Although
Before
that's
TV. It was before TV.
although that's Sada with, I was thinking for him, like a Krishna core kid puts on the shirt, it's like, oh, this is cool, like this is what I'm into and this is cool looking, he was probably just thinking like, this is the most worshipable shirt I could ever have. It's
The
like
most what?
worshipable, it's like Vishnu. It's like I have him
It's
on
'cause
me,
it's
like
Lord
as
Vishnu. I was just thinking because it's warm. This is a warm shirt.
it's got long sleeves. So Prabhupada goes on. He says, so he said, I'll read again. Human life is never meant for sense gratification.
No.
But
it seems like it is, doesn't it? It seems like it's meant for sense gratification. We should try
it's not.
It's not.
We just got to get that through our heads. It's never meant for sense gratification, but for self-realization. Srimad Bhagavatam instructs us solely on this subject from the very beginning to end. Human life is simply meant for self-realization. The civilization which aims at this utmost perfection never indulges in creating unwanted things. And such a perfect civilization prepares people only to accept the bare necessities of life or to follow the principle of, now this is great, because we're about to read a bunch of verses that sound like we're all just supposed to leave our home right now, right?
Yeah.
That's what's coming up. But Prabhupada's going to give us a principle to live by here. He said, the perfect civilization prepares people to accept the bare necessities of life or to follow the principle of the best use of a bad bargain. Right? This is something, best use of a bad bargain.
Best use of a bad bargain.
Our
Material
material
body, they say, is like a bad bargain.
There you go.
Meaning it's cool, but it's got some issues.
It's got some issues. So you make the best use of it. Our material bodies and our lives in that connection are bad bargains because the living entity is actually spirit. And spiritual advancement of the living entity is absolutely necessary, not relatively necessary. Prabhupada, that's how he's using these words, right? It's not, we have certain relative necessities, but self-realization, spiritual advancement, he's saying is absolutely necessary, right? Under any circumstances, that's what we're meant to be doing. Human life is intended for the realization of this important factor, and one should act accordingly, accepting only the bare necessities of life and depending more on God's gift without diversion of human energy for any other purpose, such as being mad for material enjoyment. I need this car. I need these clothes. I need this bigger home. I need this.
It's a type of insanity.
Yeah. Yeah. That's when he says it's, this madness. That's what he's talking about. The materialistic advancement of civilization is called the civilization of demons, which ultimately ends in wars and scarcity because we're all because we think I need more material resources. We get into competition, right? We lose touch with what's important. We lose compassion. We begin to justify and rationalize the reasons why we fight for the things of this world. If we all have the idea, let me live simply, happiness isn't found through these things, we can actually cooperate. The transcendentalist is specifically warned herewith to be fixed in mind, so that even if there is difficulty in plain living and high thinking, he will not budge even an inch from his stark determination. For a transcendentalist, it is a suicidal policy to be intimately in touch with the sense gratifiers of the world, because such a policy will frustrate the ultimate gain of life. Shukadeva Goswami met Maharaj Pariksit when the latter felt the necessity for such a meeting. It is the duty of the transcendentalist to help persons who desire real salvation and to support the cause of salvation. One might note that Shukadeva Goswami never met Maharaj Pariksit while he was ruling as a great king. For a transcendentalist, the mode of activities is explained in the next shloka. Okay, there's some famous Bhagavatam verses right now we can read. Hit it.
We're in
Text 4.
Text 4. When there are ample earthly flats to lie on, what is the necessity of cots and beds? When one can use his own arms, what is the necessity of a pillow? Maybe the author never used a pillow before. When one can use the palms of his hands, what is the necessity of varieties of utensils? Yeah, I guess it seemed like they did use utensils back then. I
Sure.
always thought they never used utensils.
What are you talking about? Oh, you mean like for eating and
Like
stuff?
eating with your hand.
Well,
I
no,
wonder if
apparently
people
they
did
did.
use utensils. When there is ample covering or the skins of trees, what is the necessity of clothing? That's going to kill our whole fashion industry if people just get into bark from trees.
Mm-hmm.
Are there no torn clothes? This is text 5. Are there no torn clothes lying on the common road? Do the trees which exist for maintaining others no longer give alms in charity, right? Everything
Mm-hmm.
that we get, some fruit, some nuts. What else do you get from trees? Fruits, nuts,
Flowers,
flowers.
different
Do the
kind of
rivers?
spices.
Yeah, cinnamon is a tree.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Cinnamon is a bark of a tree. Cloves.
Oils,
Aren't cloves from trees?
oils. Well, yeah, here they're
Oils
saying
oils come from nuts.
no, oils
Pepper,
come from all
pepper.
kind of things, right?
Well, no. I'm just saying.
There's
We're
pine
talking about
oil.
trees.
There's
We're talking about trees. So
yeah,
yeah.
pine oil. There's sandalwood oil. So many kind of oils come from trees.
What else, Mary? Any spices in
Sap,
the kitchen?
syrup,
Yeah, birch syrup, maple syrup. Are they
flowers,
flowers? Some edible flowers.
leaves.
Do the rivers being dried up no longer supply water to the thirsty? Are the caves of the mountains now closed? Or, above all, does the Almighty Lord not protect the fully surrendered souls? When then do the learned sages go to
Why then?
flatter those who are
Why?
intoxicated?
Why then?
Oh, I'm sorry. Why then do the learned sages go to flatter those who are intoxicated by hard-earned wealth? Okay, you see a real push towards simplicity, forest dwelling, foraging.
But there's a principle here, right? And the principle is simple living, high thinking. Let's not make our lives too complicated, right? It's not necessarily saying that you shouldn't have a bed, but I don't need to go out and, we're back when we were kids, in the 70s, this thing was a water bed.
Are you going to bed shame me now?
Well, you don't have a water bed, do you? Remember there was a thing, water beds.
I know. Sometimes people put water beds in our generation, like the older kids would get a cargo van and put a water bed in the back.
Water bed.
What they call them, custom vans, and they'd
Yeah.
put these incredible airbrush paintings on the side of like a Viking slaying a dragon, and a little like star window in the back. That was like a whole thing. That's
It
what you
was.
did when you were 17.
So Prabhupada's going to write here. But this is what's getting brought up here is it's saying there's a principle. Simple living, high thinking. Keep life relatively simple. Why? Because it opens up the world for cultivating a relationship with God in the heart. As long as I'm absorbed in trying to change external things to find more material enjoyment, I am out of touch with God within my own heart. But if I can simplify things, the mind begins to settle. The mind begins to become content. Now that's called sattva. And in that stage, as opposed to rajas, where I feel I always need more, in that state of mind, I can connect with God in the heart. So Prabhupada, one thing that he shares in the commentary to this text 5, he says, a sannyasi, or a renunciate, should always live alone without company. He must be fearless. He should never be afraid of living alone, although he is never alone, right? We need to, this is part of what it meant to be one of these wandering sannyasis, that not only am I living simply, but I'm also like living with the faith that God is protecting me at every moment, where I kind of put myself in that circumstance where I become more deeply aware of how God is caring for me in terms of the food that I need, the shelter that I need, the dangerous animals that are roaming around, etc. I feel like God will protect me. Does he not feed all these animals? Why won't he feed me? That's part of what it's about. And if we can learn to live with that state of consciousness, we can pass through this world without being in anxiety and actually bring our minds to deeper and deeper levels of spiritual realization. So he says, the Lord is residing in everyone's heart. And unless one is purified by this prescribed process, one will feel that he is alone. But a person in the renounced order of life must be purified by the process. Thus, he will feel that the presence of the Lord everywhere and will have nothing to fear, such as being without any company.
Kaustubha, I got a great practice for you next time you come up here.
Okay.
And it's to do with this. I mean, one way you're saying is you give up everything and then you're very dependent on God's mercy, you know, because you can't take shelter of credit cards or some stash you got or some
The
comfort,
expensive home
material
that you
comfort.
built up.
But there's another great practice you could do right now, but you can't do it in New York really, is you just take your beads, and I do this sometimes. You go out before the sun rises when it's still sometimes pitch black. Sometimes when there's no moon also. And when you can barely see the hand in front of your face. And you just go chanting into the darkness. And I tell you, there's such like a fear of the unknown just being outside like that. And you just go through and it makes you really take shelter in chanting. It's just like it's pitch black and you're just walking through the forest.
What do you call this practice, Raghu?
This is a secret practice.
Night walking? Night chanting?
Yeah, night japa.
Night japa. Okay, night japa. Okay, that sounds like a very interesting practice.
Super cool because you're really, it's truthfully, it's a little scary just walking through the forest alone.
But it brings your heart to God, right? It brings your mind to God.
Yeah, it makes you a little dependent.
Right. Prabhupada says, everyone can become a fearless and honest person if their very existence is purified by discharging the prescribed duties for each and every order of life. One can become fixed in one's prescribed duty by faithful oral reception of Vedic instructions and assimilation of the essence of Vedic knowledge by devotional service to the Lord. I think what Prabhupada is saying is you don't necessarily have to wander out into the forest. You can do your duties in life, but we have to do them with a deeper realization that I'm never alone, that God is always protecting me. You know, again, I think you mentioned, you opened up today by saying something about higher knowledge in a time of confusion or something like
positive,
that.
Yeah,
positive direction in a time of
direction,
confusion.
Yes.
And so, you know, I think a lot of people are feeling fear now. I think that fear, you know, don't be surprised if it increases in the coming months, you know?
Yeah.
But the devotee has a certain sobriety as we go through it, right? I expect this world to be unstable, but I'm feeling something very stable from within, my connection to God in the heart. And that's something that we cultivate, you know, through all the ups and downs.
Yeah.
All right.
The fearlessness can't come from something external because it's only a matter of time before it crumbles.
Right. Okay, text 6.
Text 6, thus being fixed, one must render service unto the supersoul, situated in one's own heart by his omnipotency, because he is the almighty personality of Godhead, eternal and unlimited. He is the ultimate goal of life, and by worshiping him, one can end the cause of the conditioned state of existence. I'm conditioned to think this is me. I'm conditioned to think I'm Raghunath. I'm conditioned to think I'm a boy. I'm conditioned to think I'm an American. I'm conditioned to think I'm a human. I've been told, I'm constantly being sold this concept of this is what I am. And we can end that.
You know, this again, I've mentioned this several times in the show, but cultivating this relationship with God in the heart, to me, just at this point in my life, it just feels like the most important work. Like, you know, the most important aspect of my devotional life.
The most important, what did you say? I yawned. And you know when you yawn and sort of like puts you deaf for a moment? It's the most important.
I think I said most important work.
Work. It's the most important work. Yeah.
Yeah, because, and you know, this is something I've talked about if people want to go and check out that class I gave on Patreon called The Sage of Steady Mind. But that, you know, you and I, we lived, there's duty, and then there's knowledge, but then there's a state called wisdom. And wisdom is a stage that opens up absorption and ultimately divine love. Bhagavad Gita talks about all these different stages. And duty is something that you can do, right? Like you and I became monks and we're given duties and we just followed them. When to wake up, when to go to sleep, how much to practice meditation and how much to do this and how much to do that and how to relate to these people and how to relate to those people. And duty is something, if you put a gun to someone's head and say, do this, they could do it, And knowledge is similar. We learned the philosophy. If someone said, here's the philosophy, you need to learn it, and I'm going to kill you in a month if you haven't learned it, we would learn it. It's mechanical in one sense. But wisdom means that all that knowledge about life becomes so deeply imbibed that you see the world in a different way. Like is being said here, that you could wander off into the forest and not feel afraid, that you could not feel attachment for material things, that you can, regardless of the external circumstances, that your consciousness can be situated the same, and I really feel like this, how we practice this, it has a lot to do with how we relate to other people, and it has to, and it really has to do with, like, how do we open up that relationship and cultivate that awareness of God in the heart? I feel a lot of it has to do with how we pass through the struggles with other people. Like, I'll give you an example. Like one time, wasn't even that long ago, I was accused of something, right? Of having some ill motive and really rotten, like really bad. Yeah. Like really,
you were
really
accused?
Bad.
Is it in real life?
In real life.
You were accused? What did you do?
I'm not going to get into it. I'm not going to get into it.
Like murderous?
No, not murderous, but like just really having a bad motive in what I was doing. And just honestly, this person misunderstood me completely, right? Okay. Just completely. And I was saying, can we talk about this? And the person wouldn't even talk to me about it. Right. Gotcha. And so at that point, like my tendency would be that in my mind, this would play out again and again and again and again and again. There would be a debate going on in my mind that he said this, but I would have this response. And, then they could say this, but here would be my response to that. Can't they see it? And in my mind, there's kind of a need for an audience to witness this debate, right? Right. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. To kind of establish that, I am good and this person is very wrong, and who will recognize this and redeem me, and it can actually torture the mind. And as I was going through, cause I've been trying.
I call these turbo scenarios where you're like living out these things in your mind.
Turbo scenarios.
Have you ever used that word, turbo scenarios?
I never heard that before.
Where's that from? Oh, my camera's missing. Yeah, you play them out in the mind again and again and again.
Almost helplessly, right? It's like almost you're helpless. The mind will go there and you will get lost in it. And unless you're really conscious, you see that this is where the yoga comes in, right? It's like, I don't want my mind. We had this quote the other day that from Saturday's show that from Yudhishthir, that forgiveness is a quiet mind.
Forgiveness is a quiet mind, yeah.
Right. That I need to let go of the need for anyone to recognize that I am good. Right. The Bhagavad Gita is going to say again and again that one who's dear to Krishna, that the advanced transcendentalist is one that whether they're being, whether they're like someone is praising them or whether they're being criticized, their mind remains the same.
Because that's the little entry, thing that right? You did of like replaying that thing in the mind. I think people, when they're not practicing these principles that we practice in this yoga system, letting go of resentment and forgiving, people play these turbo scenarios again and again in the mind of how to like turbo scenarios.
Turbo scenarios.
Yeah. They play them again and again in their mind of like revenge, of how I'm going to make my statement, of how I'm going to show the world. They live them in the mind again and again.
Right. And you see, that's,
and it haunts them. It's haunting.
Well, you see, to me, this is the thing, show the world, right? We want to show the world. We want to be redeemed. But the yogi understands there actually is an audience. There's someone that's seeing this all play out. Mm. And that's God in the heart. God in the heart of me. God in the heart of the person that's accusing me. Right? There's a quote, I think it may be from Prabhupada's commentary. I should find it, where he more or less says, and this can be a confusing statement. He says that, say someone criticizes one person offends another person, right? But it says that the person who is offended is just as bad as the one who's the offender.
Yeah, for sure.
Now you hear that, say, well, come on, how can that be? One person was acting offensively. Now, why should the person who was offended be? But the way that I understand it, it means by saying just as bad, what it means is they're both stuck in material consciousness. And only when, even though the person acts towards you in an offensive way, but because because there's something stable in your life, there's something genuine that's stable, and that is your connection to God in the heart. The connection to God in the heart is so solid that this means nothing to me. Even this person is criticizing me publicly or whatever, I do not feel fear or anxiety or some kind of anger about it. I'm completely free of it. It's like it's just a phantasmagoria that's just like I know that these things come and go, and that's what this world is, but my stable connection to God in the heart is undisturbed. And I feel like there is an audience that's seeing it, and there is someone that can redeem, and that's ultimately God in the heart. And so when these challenges come up in life, for the yogi, for the practicing yogi, it's almost like welcome. It's like, oh, this is very good, because this gives me the opportunity to really practice what I preach, right? To practice what the Bhagavad Gita teaches, to let me just let this go. And when the mind wants to go into what do you call it? The turbo
scenario.
When my mind wants to re-enter into the turbo scenario, the yogi, the practicing yogi will find that the length of the turbo scenario should greatly reduce. It may come up in the mind. There's nothing we could do about that. But what we can do is not indulge in it. So you shorten, right,
Yeah.
the extent of that turbo scenario.
You can't fight the hate with the hate. You can't fight with the hate with the hate.
Yeah, just move on, let go of it. And then what happens is the mind starts to become trained not to go there. Right. And it's a miserable place, quite frankly.
It's miserable. Living in that mind. It's like a torch.
All the time.
Oh, we did it again. We did another Srimad Bhagavatam class.
All right, we're back.
Thanks everybody for joining us. There's a lot of people joining us on Zoom late in the day, and I'm going to greet them all. But I want to say, if you want to hang out with us on Zoom, you can do it. You just got to email Mara at wisdomandthesages108@gmail.com. And you can join us here live if you're one of the others. Hey, if you are one of the others out there listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or YouTube, go to Apple Podcasts right now, write us a review, and tell us your story, how you got here. You know, tell us your journey into bhakti or your spiritual life. It's interesting. We all get inspired by it. And if you'd like to support what we're doing, it's a community-supported podcast. You go to patreon.com/wisdomofthesages. Patreon.com/wisdomofthesages. And not only do you support us, but we try to give back even more. We have a whole yoga school going on there. Mara, is there a class today?
Yeah, we have 2 classes today. We have Bob Healy.
Classes today?
Bob
yoga school.
Bob Healy is doing Yin and Yoga Nidra in half an hour at 6:30 a.m.
Bob Healy?
Yeah.
Bob Healy?
Bob
We
Healy.
love Bob Healy.
Bob Healy. And what's the other one?
And Kumi G is teaching tonight at 6 p.m.
Cool.
And on top of that, there's also a Bhakti Recovery meeting today at 1 o'clock, I believe.
Bhakti Recovery meetings. So if you're interested in recovery program, 12-step with a big Bhakti twist, we've got you covered. So thanks for everybody for joining us. Oh, plus we have and every class that we've ever done is all recorded, so you can just go through histories and workshops and classes. There's no need to join a yoga studio anymore. We've got it.
We've got a lot of yoga teachers that listen to us, right?
Oh, just kidding. If you're, unless you own a yoga studio, of course, then join the respective yoga studio in your town. Thanks everybody joining us. Surya Radhika, Katya, Sherry, Jamuna Jaya, Eric Noble, the original, Allison Schill, Henry Anantashesh from Switzerland. Hey!